Welcome to Moments with Marianne. Allow me to interrupt your train of thought with something that may be one of the most interesting things you hear today. This is Marianne-pestana, and our special guest today is Peggy Fitzsimmons, and she's here to share with us her new book, Release. Create a clutter-free and soul-driven life. Can removing clutter put you in alignment with your soul's purpose and your true spiritual nature? Peggy's here to dive into that. Now, Peggy holds a PhD in counseling psychology and has worked in the fields of counseling and healing for over 25 years. She worked at Omega Institute of Holistic Studies in New York and was a consulting producer on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Super Soul Sunday. So let's welcome to the show, Peggy Fitzsimmons.
Hello, Marianne. Thanks for having me.
Well, Peggy, it's such an honor to have you here to talk about your new book. What inspired you to write it?
Over a long period of time. I think I was doing the work, working with people in their homes, doing decluttering, and working with people in other capacities, doing other forms of decluttering, mental, emotional, energetic decluttering, relationship decluttering. And so I kind of pulled it all together in this book. And it just happened slowly over time. And I certainly kicked and screamed a lot of the way, but eventually it came together, and something I'm really happy about and proud of.
Well, you should be very proud of your work. My goodness, I was so inspired by it. And it's interesting because when people think of decluttering, they typically don't think of it the way that you present it.
What I mean by decluttering is releasing the things in our lives that don't really serve us and don't really serve who we really are and what we're really here for.
What a great point that is. Do you find that people tend to say, well, I don't have a whole lot in my house, so I'm good, without really considering that there are other things they may need to declutter?
Yeah. I think my book is a book about how we identify. If we identify with the ego aspect of ourselves, or if we identify with the soul aspect of ourselves, wherever we're identifying creates a different kind of life trajectory. So although my book is about decluttering and there's practical takeaway and all kinds of good stuff in there that way, it's also kind of deeper than that, and it's broader than that. And so I think there's a little something for everyone that way, because I think clutter is really about misidentifying ourselves and forgetting that we're here temporarily as eternal, loving souls. And if we can remember that, it changes how we engage with our thoughts and our emotions and the stuff in our closets. It's all connected.
Well, Peggy, I am so curious. When you first got into decluttering, just in general, what even drew you to that?
I think what drew me to it was my Virgo nature, which is a lot about organization and kind of finding order and finding beauty in things. And I just was always that person. I'd go to my friend's house and be like, sure, I'll help you clean out the garage. Let's do it. I just always liked the act of physically helping people get more free. And I think that carried over, with just the freedom of people in general and my own search for freedom. I mean, obviously we do what we do to heal ourselves ultimately, right? So I think I've always been looking for what's real and looking for interactions that are real and looking for the truth, and all these kinds of things have kind of been the driver of my life. So I think when I can help someone release clutter, it helps me feel safer somehow, right? And it also helps them feel safer in some way.
Oh, I completely understand that. If I walk into a home and it just has too much stuff, I just feel like I can't breathe and I have to get out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm very energetically sensitive as well. And so I can feel all of that. And I think that was also part of what drove me. And really, I just started helping out some friends. And then it was like, oh, wait, I could I could actually do this for my work, for part of the work that I did. And so that became a main focus, was doing that kind of work and traveling all over the country to people's houses. And when you're with someone in that way, someone once said to me, it's kind of like if you go to therapy, you go for an hour and you sit in their office, and then you come home and you got all this stuff to deal with. And when you're in someone's home, it's a very intimate, sacred kind of thing, because you see it all. There's no hiding. There's no hiding. It's a very vulnerable position for somebody to bring in a helper to help declutter. And I love that about it too, because it's intense and immersive, and it's just you and that person doing it together. It's really thrilling to me.
Well, this is probably a really good time to touch on this. I know in your book, you talk about ego. And I think a lot of times people really feel like ego is something bad and they have to get rid of it.
Thank you for bringing that up, boy, because it is a real misconception, I think, in our world. And even a lot of spiritual writers will talk about, annihilate the ego. Don't go near your ego, it's bad. And the way I'm framing it is that we have these two aspects. One of them is the ego aspect of ourselves. The ego is kind of the image we construct of ourselves. It's the beliefs, the needs, the roles, the possessions that we identify with. And the ego is a part of us, and it's the part of us that's concerned with self-preservation and success, survival. And the ego is something we have to love, not try to destroy or reject. We just have to know that it's a part of us that's focused on fear and competition and conflict and scarcity. It's a part of us that thinks we're separate from other beings and from the earth even. And it's kind of a false self. That the way I write in the book is that it's like, who's at the wheel, who's driving your life. Is if your ego's at the wheel, you're going to have a very different way of approaching the world, and it's going to be led by fear primarily.
Oh, yeah, survival is a good thing. But I can really see how people, if they're feeling afraid or have some type of hurt or trauma, that they can also collect not only a lot of stuff, but stay emotionally stuck.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Because everything, the ego holds on, right? The soul aspect of us is about letting go. The soul aspect knows that we're free, we're unattached, we're deeply connected to everything, but yet we're somehow still not attached. It's a different mentality, that aspect. And everything we hold on to, it connects to the ego. So whether it's, jealous thoughts or negative emotion like sadness or shame, or energies, striving, wanting, needing, all the things that are kind of the prevalent approach in our culture. They're all reflective of the fear of the ego. Clutter is the fear of the ego kind of made visible. That's kind of how I see it.
Wow. Clutter is the fear of the ego made visible. That is definitely something that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And it has me thinking, when should someone question, like, hey, maybe I have not just some physical clutter, but some spiritual clutter that I need to take a look at?
It's a great question. I think we all know when we have that feeling in our deeper self, in our gut, so to speak, that's like something isn't right here. I'm consuming too much. I'm accumulating too much. These things in my life, whether they're physical possessions or conflicted relationships, they're taking more priority, more time than my deeper soul desires, what I really want to be doing and being in the world. When we feel like what's happening in our life is not in alignment with what we're here for, which is really about serving other people. Sometimes people come to decluttering when they just feel a certain emptiness, despite all the seeming abundance around them, the 3,000 square foot house and the garage full of things and all the apparent fullness of life, but there's some sort of emptiness. I think those are the things that let us know that something wants to happen.
I love that because we can tap into our own intuition to see if it's time to make a change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that nudge is really happening a lot right now over the last couple of years with everything going on in our world. There's just a lot of people reevaluating, kind of like, okay, wait a minute, what really matters here?
Mm-hmm.
How do I want to live? At what pace do I want to live my life? Where do I want to put my energy? And it's an extremely intense time. So we've been kind of forced to focus in. So a lot of people are wanting to make some changes. They're changing jobs. They're downsizing their houses. They're changing relationships. I mean, I'm sure as in your life, you've experienced that with your friends or people you know, or in your own life. It's a very fertile time that way.
What's really interesting, I see a lot of people connecting with family and really putting into perspective what's important for them. They're reevaluating everything.
Yeah, reevaluate everything is the key. And it really is that way. I think during this, especially during this COVID time, it's been, everybody had to slow down. They had to be forced to not do all the things they do that are kind of ways to distract sometimes, right? Like staying busy and running here and running there, and just all the fragmentation of our lives, I think, came into some focus. And now we're kind of finding our way out, but some people are like, I don't really want to be engaged the way I was before. And I think that's a reflection of kind of collective decluttering, right? We're saying to ourselves, wait a minute, who is running my life? Is it my false self or my more true self? Who's at the wheel of my life, and how's it working for me? Is it working for me? Does it feel good, right, and true? And I think a lot of people are, having powerful answers to that question right now.
Is this how people can identify if they're really in alignment with their true self?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think most of us are running around out of alignment with our true selves. I think our whole culture is based on misidentification, misalignment, prioritizing things that aren't really the things that nourish us, that feel good. So maybe it's things like money, 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 the latest thing, right? All the cultural focus on achieving and being better than, and being seen and being known, and all these things feed the ego. They don't feed the soul.
Yeah.
And as we watched during COVID time, as an example, we watched all the healthcare workers as an example, right? They just put themselves right in the middle of what mattered to them. Like, oh my gosh, I've got to help people. I'm putting myself at risk to do that. I mean, that's a soul-based choice.
And I don't believe we could ever repay our healthcare workers or our first responders for everything they've done for us. And there are a lot of people that were taking some major extremes just to be away from all of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of extremes right now. And I think that's part of, I feel like we're birthing a new consciousness, and that's part of all these things that are happening in the world. It's so tumultuous, and it's a scary time, really. It's a very unsettled, scary time for people. But I believe that that's part of this next level of awakening, where we get more in alignment with the fact that we're here temporarily on this planet to love, to serve our love in whatever ways we do. And for you, it's doing this interviewing and radio work and podcast work. For me, it was writing this book. And there, there's all kinds of different ways we serve our love to the world, but the only reason we're here is for that, and the only time we're here is temporary. So
there are so many people that believe we are guaranteed tomorrow, and we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just out here trying to help people not become minimalists, not get rid of everything. It's not about that for me at all. It's really just about getting honest about how how your life feels, how your home feels, how your inner world feels, and then being willing to make some shifts to make everyone better people to each other, really, to themselves, to their families, to their communities.
I know in your book you share these great examples of what it looks like to emotionally declutter. Do you often hear people say, well, I'm really in touch with my emotions. I'm good.
Yeah, well, emotional decluttering is really it's not about negating any emotions or, pushing away anything. I mean, emotional decluttering is just about knowing that even when we're in the throes of difficult emotion, such as sadness about something or shame about something, that is one aspect of us, but there's a bigger aspect that's operating. So, for instance, if you're in a lot of grief, like for instance, I was speaking with someone yesterday who's going through a lot of grief about losing a parent and a sister within a year. And right, so and many people are dealing with a lot of loss right now. And the way to deal with that loss is to be with it, right? Is to feel all of that when it comes, right? Because it comes like a wave. There's all this fear or panic or loss or grief or I can't believe this is happening or rage or blame or all kinds of emotions. And I feel like we need to be able to sit with those emotions, let them be there, because once we allow them to come up and out and through, there's something. It's like the turbulence of a lake, when the storm's coming in. It's very turbulent on top, but underneath, down deep, there's a calmness, there's a stillness, there's life happening down there. And that's how I see emotions. It's like we have to allow them to be there, and remember too that there's a stronger, deeper, wiser place that is not that understands that even if someone has left us, even if someone has passed away, whatever the scenario is, we're still connected to them. The soul knows that there's still connection in other forms. So when you can be with your emotions, you can declutter the belief that the ego-based emotion is the only emotion, and you can come into the presence of your soul knowing as well.
Oh, I just love that. Do you find that sometimes you get resistance from people who perhaps are afraid to feel their emotions because maybe they're not sure that they'll be able to get out of that?
Yes, that's one of the biggest reasons that people have clutter in their emotional closets, so to speak.
Mm.
It's like if I have this feeling, if I allow it, it will overtake me. I'll lose control. I won't be able to come back out of the deep hole that is some of these difficult emotions. But that's actually not true. And then we have to watch how we support each other. So if you're with a friend who's in that kind of an emotional moment, you can watch how often we'll do things like, oh, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, or oh yeah, just don't deal with that now, just focus on your work. And nobody wants to be with each other in that real present
Mm-hmm.
way, like, yeah, whatever is happening, let's just be with it and let it come, because it's there anyway. And if we're pushing it away or refusing to deal with it or avoiding it, all the things that people do all the time, it just becomes emotional clutter in our closet.
Does it seem when that happens that people are in this space where they're just piling on their clutter? Because I can't even imagine what it would be like to unpack that.
Well, yeah. I mean, decluttering is, to me, it's what we're doing all the time. Decluttering isn't something you do once, right? You clean out your closet and you're done. It's an ongoing process, and I think we have moments where we feel something and we go, oh wow, I just got through a big episode of something, anger, rage, grief, and now all of a sudden I feel calm again. I
Mm.
feel I feel okay. And I think that's the part that we don't understand. Like, I feel like our real true nature is about peace and contentment and acceptance. And I think all the times we feel our thoughts pinballing everywhere and turbulent emotions and these kind of lower vibration energies, right? Like wanting and needing and conflict and striving, and disharmony and holding on to things and possessions. That's really not our natural state. I mean, our true state is something very different. It's presence, it's peace. Um, it's collaboration and it's letting go. So that's where emotional clutter fits into all that. It's all about letting go, and the only way to let go is to come present with whatever's happening in a moment.
Yeah, because it's only in the present moment that we really are able to control anything, if control is even the word we want to use.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting word, right? That's true. Yeah, it's the only way to be with everything, to be with anything. You just have to be with it, and we're not used to doing that, but it is our natural way.
It seems in the US culture, we are not really geared towards death, dealing with death, or even our feelings around that. And investigating that can feel pretty foreign.
Definitely. Yep, definitely. It's all connected, because even the myth that we've been sold that success means to have a 5-bedroom house full of stuff and 3 cars and all that, which is fine. It's fine to enjoy the material world, but there's a point where there's an excess to it where it's no longer fulfilling. And there's a forgetting of what you were just speaking about, that we are here temporarily. And who's dealing with all that stuff when we go? And how are we facing that fact that we're not here forever? And we have to be in acceptance of that rather than denial of that. But the ego doesn't want to know anything about death. Self-preservation is where it's at.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've heard people say, do you own your stuff or does your stuff own you? It's like, how attached are you to all the things, And does that really apply to like the mental and emotional clutter as well?
Absolutely. Yes. Because we can have ego-based thoughts, let's say, thoughts of, I say in the book, when the ego's at the wheel, the kind of theme song of the ego is, I am not enough, you are not enough, and there is not enough. Right? I am not enough, you are not enough, and there is not enough. That's a mindset. And when you're operating from that mindset, you're going to have certain thoughts. You're going to have thoughts about lack and separation and jealousy and judgment, right? So in that way, owning your stuff or your stuff owning you, it's kind of like those thoughts begin to own you, and they're really misguided thoughts. They're not true. The soul approaches the world from the standpoint of, I am enough, you are enough, and there is enough. Those are two very different ways of rolling through life.
Well, and talk about rolling through life. I know in your book you talk about how, decluttering is a journey. And I think a lot of people maybe don't look at it that way. I know you touched on that a little earlier before.
Yeah, most people kind of want it to be that you just get rid of your stuff and that's it and you're done. And that's fine. That can happen to a degree, right? You can clean out your drawers and they can be pristine and you can feel really good about it. And then maybe in a few months they start to catch up again or something. But I feel like kind of the joy of freeing ourselves and the joy of understanding that we're in this kind of dual consciousness of ego and soul and ego and soul. And so knowing that, to me, it's more liberating and more fun to know that decluttering is ongoing. To me, it takes the pressure off.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, but
Mm-hmm.
people have to kind of get used to that. They're like, wait a minute, I don't know about that. I want to be done with it. But what happens is when you do a round of decluttering, let's say, if you go through your kitchen and clear out what doesn't really serve you and add in what does serve your soul and your own nourishment and how you want to feel in the kitchen and all these things that, you would think about as you're decluttering. Well, when you do that, that changes something and it leads to the next thing, because when we declutter, we are kind of altering what's gone stagnant, right? Most people, their homes look the same. The room
Mm-hmm.
looks the same. The closet looks the same. The kitchen looks the same. And it's like a stagnant energy and we don't even really notice it. But once we see it and we begin to dance with it a little bit and change it a little bit, that energy that becomes available then for us to use for other things. So all decluttering, even though it's a process, it always is leading to something in a different realm, perhaps, right? You declutter some fear thoughts, and then you decide, wait a minute, I'm gonna live with a little bit more of the idea that I'm safe and the world is a good place. And then you walk that way to the grocery store and you engage differently with someone or a job interview or anything, right? So decluttering is ongoing, but it's always fertile. It's always bringing new things of the soul, things of our essence.
As people are decluttering, do you feel that that's changing their viewpoint of the world?
I think, in my experience, yes. In my experience, yes, because people, when you really look, when you really walk through your house with your spider sense tingling, feeling into the way that house feels and the places you look away from, right? The garage, the closet, and the guest bedroom. All these places where I go, oh God, I don't want to deal with that. Oh, I can't. Oh, that closet makes me crazy. The things tumbling out, the jam-packedness of things. When people see that and really see it, because the ego lets us look away, right? But the soul wants to be present and really look. So when we really look and then we go, oh, wow, I want something different, that implicitly changes us, in my experience.
Well, I think that that's just so empowering because, I mean, you talk about having energy stagnant, and if we're keeping, if we're going into our house and changing up our rooms and maybe moving the furniture, if we're not doing anything with our minds, then we're still stuck.
We're still stuck, yeah. And lots of people don't have, like for me, I don't have a lot of physical clutter because everything I own fits in my car, and my car's a coupe. Okay,
You
yeehaw for
go,
me.
girl.
Yeah, I mean, that's not. It doesn't matter. I mean, I've worked with lots of people with 6,000 square foot homes, right? There's
Hmm.
no. It's not about what's right or what's wrong. I just know that works for me. But compared to a minimalist, there are minimalists out there that live with 100 things or less.
Mm.
Now, 100 things, you got your pair of pants you're wearing right now, your shirt, your earrings, the glass you're drinking water from. Okay, that's 4, right? We're adding up here. So
Well,
I
and some people just have 100 shoes in their closet.
just have 100 shoes. That's right. And it's funny you said that. I decluttered a woman once, and we just spent an afternoon and we went through her shoes, and she had 70 pairs of shoes that we released.
Oh,
70.
wow.
And I gave them to a friend of mine from a family that didn't have as many resources,
Hmm.
and that they got passed out and around to everybody. And I remember the woman wrote to me and she said, "Thank you. Now every woman in my family has shoes." That's what we're here for. I always say,
Hmm.
like, sharing is the new philanthropy, right? If you have 3 and I don't have any, well, then I want to give you one. And I think when we hold on, when we hoard, because nobody really needs 100 pairs of shoes or 50 pairs of
Hmm.
shoes. It's fine to have that if you want that, that's okay. But again, just try to get really clear with yourself about what that means and if that's really the truth of things and not just the cultural hypnosis that we're part of, that mass ego hypnosis that is very difficult to withstand, for sure.
When you see that people just accumulate a lot of things, is there like a number one reason that happens?
I think that the number one reason people accumulate is because they are driven by fear. I think clutter is the fear of the ego made visible. And that's just my experience being with a lot of people and watching people, literally watching someone freeze as they're going through their sock drawer. There's maybe same thing as shoes, right? 70 pairs of socks, 60 pairs of socks, and someone literally freezing, being unable to decide which ones to be able to let go of. That's a deeper fear that's showing itself. It's a fear of not having enough. It's a fear of not being enough. It's a fear of like somehow you're going to be not good enough, not accepted, not have what you need, not be safe. I mean, there's a lot tied into clutter and fear. And honestly, for people with a lot of physical clutter, I'd say that fear is closer to terror.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would make sense because I've heard of people having a lot of clutter and in some way they're patting themselves from the world.
Yes, sometimes people have things that kind of act as buffers, right? So they have a lot of things around them. It makes them feel kind of buffered in and safe. I've seen that for sure. People tend to keep things that they have connected to emotional experiences or to connections with other people. So obviously it's fine to have things that represent let's say your mother's love, right? She gave you a couple of things that you want to keep. Of course, keep anything you want, but sometimes people confuse the object with the feeling, right? So they end up having too many of something. That's like I love unicorns, and now I've got 4,000 unicorns all over my house because everyone gives me unicorns, and and the unicorns begin to become a problem, right? Because they're kind of too much. Now, for some people, they have a bunch of unicorns, and it's fine, and it's perfect because that's what they really love, and I'm full support of that. But maybe they have another area, like maybe they have a bunch of rags in the laundry room, like 100 of them, that they're keeping just in case. Right? Just in case, if you hear yourself say that, that's a sign that there's some fear there. And maybe they can release some of those. I always say, when I work with people, I use what I call the magic of 10%. I just say, well, let's release 10% of the things that aren't serving you, and let's add 10% to things of the soul. So, for instance, 10% is really helpful. So, if, for instance, you have 10 shirts in your closet, can you release one of them? If you have 10 pairs of shoes, can you release one of them? If you spend too much time in front of the television and not enough time outside, can you take 10% off of your TV watching time and add 10% more time sitting outside or walking in the park, right? So things of the soul, things of the ego, and 10% keeps it safe because it's a doable number. And it comforts the fear of the ego. The ego's like, don't take my stuff. and when I come into someone's house, they're like, you're here to take my stuff. It's like, no, I am not here to take your stuff. I'm here to help you get honest about what stuff really loves you back. What stuff in your home really makes you feel the truth of who you are. What stuff in your thoughts, what emotions, what relationships, right? What energies. So, 10% is a way to keep the ego feeling safe.
Well, I like that because it's little baby steps. And, if people are scared, then they're like, okay, well, I can do 10%. That doesn't sound like 90. So I'm okay.
That's right. And people tend to be overwhelmed by their clutter. Most people have so much in their house, as an example, that they can't even really begin. It's like, it's too overwhelming. And many people who are listening to this right now may have that sense. And I would say to you, if that's the case, 10% will help. It'll get the energy moving. It'll get you into safe action. But also, if you do feel overwhelmed, it's really smart to either bring in a professional. There's tons of people out there doing this kind of work, helping people declutter, or professional organizers. They go under that name sometimes. But get some help. If you can't afford a professional, then get a good friend. Not a friend who's going to scream in their ego voice at you either, by the way. Get rid of that crap. Some people are not good company for decluttering, but some people really are. And what I found is that the fear that creates clutter is fear that also needs some form of company to get through it. And that's part of why I wrote the book, because I wanted to create something that would feel like company for someone who was taking this decluttering journey.
Yeah, because it really is more than, just physical stuff, which I really appreciate about your book. Because, while a lot of times people will look at some of the emotional stuff, there's that spiritual component that you also look at, which I was like, gosh, okay, now we're dealing with the whole person as opposed to a fragmented piece.
Yeah, I had to name that. I was having trouble when I was first writing the book, because I knew it was going to be a spiritual perspective kind of book. And then I was kind of dancing around it. I just wasn't sure. There was something off about it when I was writing it. And then my friend Kathy said to me, she said, well, you're really good at naming things. So just name it. What is this? And I said, well, it's unapologetically spiritual. She's like, that's right. So just start with that. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I could just release into that. It's like, yeah, there's all kinds of books on decluttering, and they're great. All of them, there's information, there's techniques, there's psychology, there's spirituality in a lot of them too. I'm sure. I've not really read them, by the way, because I just don't read that much, but everyone, we're all human beings here. Right. So I think that people who come to a place of wanting to declutter are often feeling that all the stuff in their house, or their relationship problems, or their constant wanting and competing and needing, and their negative feelings, all these things are keeping them from their spiritual nature. And they'll say, I just feel disconnected spiritually. I don't feel in touch with anything. And what I'm putting forth in my book is that's our inherent nature. So that's accessible. It's right there, but it's definitely been cluttered up with ego-based kind of thinking and feeling. And so that's what I wanted to tell people, hey, yeah, we're all here. We're all spiritual beings. That's what we are. We're spirits in bodies on this earth for a time. That's the game.
Going through this. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're moving through this earth plane. We're moving through the material world. And there's nothing wrong. There's many, many delights in this material world. There's beautiful things. There's beautiful clothing. There's beautiful cars. There's beautiful food. I mean, it's true. We're on this planet, and we want to enjoy all that, but we have to stay honest about if all of that world is taking priority or precedence over something internal that wants to feel differently, feel more love, feel more kind, feel more connected. That's when people come to decluttering, when they feel disconnected, I think, from themselves, from other people. Yeah.
It's like they're coming from an inauthentic place and they can feel it, because I would just, think that would feel very fake. Like, oh gosh, I'm having to do all these things. And hey, I've gotten the awards and done those kind of things too. And then afterwards you get them, you're like, well, what the heck am I, I'm supposed to be happy and it didn't happen. What's going on?
Yeah, because it doesn't come from the external. And I think people they're searching, they're trying, they're achieving. And believe me, I did that trip too. I have a PhD, and I, all the standard life stuff. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, but it has to be in some kind of balance. And I think when it's not, we feel that misalignment. We feel that pushing through every day and never quite feeling content. And we feel the lack of connection with people, even our own kids. People are too busy to just sit with their kids, just relax. There's not a lot of relaxing going on.
Well, and it's interesting now because people have brought that home, and it's if they're not relaxed, I'm sure their home environment is probably feeling pretty chaotic.
Yeah, a lot of people have that kind of chaotic feeling in the house, right? So it's either there's too many things, or there's too many things, like maybe one room has too many things in that room, too close together. There's no space between the notes, is how I like to describe it, because people tend to get it. It's like what makes music beautiful isn't the notes, it's the space between the notes. And many of us are living lives that are just note, 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 and there's not that space. So whether that's being busy all day, or having too many things, or our minds just racing all day from one thought to the next, forward to the future. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Back to the past. I shouldn't have said that 5 minutes ago, but I did. Why did I say that? Oh my God, maybe my kid's not going to get into that kindergarten and is going to have a terrible life. And I shouldn't have ate that food. And, we're bouncing all over in time. That's the ego mind does that. It's like a staticky mind that bounces us. And our soul mind is different. It's more of the deeper intuitive place, right? Where there's clarity and there's ease and there's not so much static.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the big part. I think clutter in the home, clutter in your mind, it's like static. But we think that static is the real thing because we're embedded in it. So we think all the noise of our lives is the truth, but the noise isn't. The noise is part of the lie and part of what keeps us out of our own soul nature and feeling peaceful and content.
Do you find that people who get in that place where they're just so used to the noise that if they are trying to make a transition, they feel like maybe, something's wrong with them, or they're not, they're not getting it, or getting what they really need?
Yes, I think that's part of what's happening now. We're so used to following the herd, right? The herd of egos stampeding around the earth. And when you decide to do something different, it's there's a lot of backlash. It's like, what do you mean you're not going to go to law school and become a doctor and go to Harvard and earn $100,000 a year in your first job? And I mean, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure. And even in a small way, I've worked with people where, let's say we've emptied a dresser drawers, right? Released some things and now the drawer has some space. Like maybe there's actually one side of one drawer with nothing in it. And people get a little nervous about that at first. They're like, what the drawers half empty? It's a waste of space. They'll say something like that, or, right? Because we're just so used to having everything a certain way. And I always say, if you're clearing your bookshelf, leave one shelf empty for a while. Let's see what wants to emerge in that space. Let's create some space so we can see what wants to emerge. And a lot of times it's really interesting for people. Things will emerge that they don't expect. Like maybe they'll hear from someone they haven't heard from in a long time. Or they'll connect the dots and go, you know what, I am ready for a different job. Or I do want to start to sing again. I haven't been singing for 10 years. I mean, little things of the soul that we love that we don't do because we're on this other treadmill. I think that's also one of the promises of decluttering. When you create space, then that allows for some new energy to come in, some new essence of the soul to come in. And people are looking for that. I always wanted to write. I always want to draw. You hear people say it all the time. Oh, I never bake anymore. I love to bake, but I don't do it.
Really follow their passion, and like they're looking for permission to do it.
Absolutely. People are looking for permission to follow their passion, and their passion is their soul's longing. It's what feeds them. It's what they were born to do, how they were born to be. And that's what ultimately I think everyone's looking for. And there's a lot more permission now for the younger people, right? The vibe is changing. So younger people have a lot more freedom about that. But but still, there's still a cultural piece to this, a collective ego consciousness that makes us doubt what we know to be true for ourselves. And that's, to me, what decluttering is about. It's about removing, releasing, letting go of that which you know is not really true to yourself, which really doesn't help you serve your love to the world in your unique ways.
When we have somebody that knows they need to declutter, and we're talking everything, the whole enchilada here, but they are afraid to do it, what usually is keeping them from moving forward?
A lot of times for me, I've seen it's the overwhelm of it all. They're like, oh my God, I can't look at myself and change things. I'm too busy. I've got too much going on. And I think that's kind of true, right? Because we're on these weird treadmills, but we can always carve out time and space. Because what's more important, right? What's more important than knowing who you are and bringing your life into alignment with that? And that's really what this book is about: knowing who you are as a soul in a human body and bringing your life into alignment with that, and really being honest about what feels good, what feels right, what feels true, what lifts your energy, what keeps you in a state of acceptance, what allows you to feel free, to feel kind, to feel okay, to feel enough. And that's what decluttering is all about. And people get afraid, but then go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, I was just to say, people are afraid and they're overwhelmed is my answer to your question. Coming back to the question.
Well, and it's interesting because, I was kind of, I read your book and I was so impressed with it. I've been listening to your other interviews, and there's one part that you talked about shame as well. And it's interesting. I would think that for someone that maybe has a lot of clutter, maybe that's what they're kind of feeling like. If, they're, having to go down a path, maybe it's overwhelming because they also have shame.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually glad you said that, because you're absolutely right. That's a huge part of it. And I've had people, I've gone into their homes and they'll say, the day before, I remember texting this woman, like, can't wait to come tomorrow. And she's like, me too. And I'll tell you that I just hid a bunch of stuff in the basement. So there's that. So people hide, they are ashamed. Yeah, and I feel like that does definitely keep people from moving forward, because they can't imagine showing anybody what their house looks like, or they can't imagine that they won't be judged about that. Shame is all about that, right? Same thing. I'm not enough, right? I'm not enough. You are not enough. There is not enough. It's that ego mindset. And that's why I always say, if you need company, find the company, whether it's in a book or an audible book or a podcast or a good friend, a family member, anyone who can hold that space of like, yeah, you want something different, and I'm gonna be with you as you do that.
Well, and I know we haven't even covered like a majority of your book. I mean, there's so much great information in there. And I'm just saying that because, we've covered so much, but then there are things like the essential skills we'll develop as we work on releasing this and all that. You've got so much other great information in your book. If someone's looking to connect with you and be part of your community, Peggy, where would they go?
Well, I have a website, peggyfitzsimmons.com, and I've got my book on Amazon and Audible. So some people like to listen rather than read, and I understand that. With on my on the website, there's all kinds of articles and podcasts and things for people who might not be able to afford a book or don't want to buy a book, which I totally get.
Mm-hmm.
So go on that website and see if there's some nourishment there for you. Um, and yeah, that's about it. I'm not a big social media kind of person. I don't have like an active big community following. It's not really my interest in a weird sort of way. But you can reach out to me through the website. There's an email. I work with people now doing some Zoom decluttering. I'm not working in the home anymore, and I also work with people on kind of a coaching consulting basis on the phone. And I'm happy to help anyone get started or connect with the person who can be with them as they do it. I always felt like, my freedom is tied to your freedom, right? So, anytime you liberate yourself, you liberate me. If I liberate myself, I liberate you. So I just, that's what I'm hoping for people. And I think we're all in this together, and we're all dealing with clutter every day: mental, emotional, energetic, relationship, physical. And that's true for me too, because I too am a soul in a human body and struggling with an ego mind the way we all do. So I think that's the main thing. It's just like, yeah, let's have fun with this. To me, I call decluttering a release party. It's like, woohoo, it's fun. I mean, what's more fun? It's not about forcing yourself to get rid of things. It's like when you get clear about who you are and what you really want for your life right now. And that's all in the book, but when you get clear on your soul's intention right now and the fact that you are primarily a soul in a human body, then you go through your home and things begin to let go of you, and you travel through your mind and your emotions and things that don't serve begin to let go of you. And that's the fun. That's the lightness. That's the joy of this ongoing process of decluttering.
Well, and if someone, let's say, don't want to buy the book, I would say go to your local library and ask for them to purchase the book, or check it out at your local library.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I mean, it is a book that is, I felt worth its weight in gold. Put it that way.
Oh, thank you. That means so much to me, because when you create something, it's a kind of a vulnerable thing, right? To create something and see where it's going to land with people. And what's been so fun is just hearing people's feedback and all the different people. Like I've got a 30-year-old guy I know who's dealing with a lot of drug addiction right now, and he's reading the book and saying, man, I got all kinds of ego going on in my life, right? And then this 80-year-old neighbor of mine, I just gave a book the other day, and she wrote me this little Snoopy card saying, like, even at my age, this is exactly the book I'm trying to learn from. And my 90-year-old aunt is like, I'm not going to let my ego be in charge anymore. And it's just so sweet. So I thank you for the feedback. And I hope anyone who reads it loves it and gets something good from it. And also there's so many other great books out there about decluttering. So go towards the one that your intuition feels is right for you, but just go towards it. If you're feeling that pull, follow the breadcrumbs.
Follow the breadcrumb. Well, Peggy, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for everyone listening. And let's all free each other, free ourselves, free each other.
Let's definitely make sure that we do what we can, not only to free ourselves, but to help those around us. Make sure to pick up your copy of Release, Create a Clutter-Free and Soul-Driven Life by Peggy Fitzsimmons. You can visit Peggy's website at peggyfitzsimmons.com for more information. There you'll find information about her book and audiobook. Release is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, support our indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we Make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.